Wild Welfare is an international project designed to create a dialogue between improving substandard zoo collections in South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. North Carolina Zoo Director Dr. David Jones is at the forefront of this effort. He recently stopped by our studios to give us details.
Joining us now is Dr. David Jones, Director of the North Carolina Zoo. Dr. Jones, welcome back to North Carolina Now.
Always a pleasure. Lovely to see you.
Well, it's great to see you, and you're here to tell us about a brand new project that you have been working on in the last year or so. It's called Wild Welfare. First of all, what is the mission of this organization?
Well, it's to really help zoos around the world where the standards of husbandry and welfare are very poor. And you know, Shannon, one thing that amazed me when I started looking at the figures was there are probably 10,000 zoos out there, zoos being any animal collection open to the public. And only about 10% of those have any sort of rules, regulations, ethics, welfare standards. So there's thousands and thousands of these organizations where welfare is a big issue. And no one yet has really looked at that in a comprehensive way. And that's what we're trying to do.
How then are you going about this work?
Well, let me tell you about how it originated, because it really comes from two things. My 4 decades of being in the zoo world, and I'm amazed it's that long, 4 decades where when I started out at London Zoo as a young veterinarian, I was all over the world. London had sort of many connections, Commonwealth and other countries, the old British Empire. And so I was often seeing bad zoos in mostly underdeveloped countries. And then in more recent years, I think both the public expectation, the expectation of major welfare organizations, is that the mainstream zoo world, the big zoos, Europe and America particularly, should be doing something to help these zoos of poor standard, mainly because when you see something in the media on a bad zoo, it impacts us all. So it really comes from those two origins, and what we're trying to address is a problem which has been there for years but has never really been tackled.
Where are some of the places that you're doing work and will be doing work in the future?
Well, mostly Southeast Asia and Africa. Some areas of Central and South America. One has to remember that because the mainstream associations, America has the American Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and Europe has a similar operation. Now, in those cases, they are working really in their own regions, although I have to say in the US, we have some of the worst standards in some of our zoos. You know, we have 2,000 zoos in the US, only 200 roughly are accredited. We're one of the worst countries in the world in terms of standards, so sooner or later we'll probably need to do something about that. But it's mainly at the moment in countries which do not have any sort of mainstream association that can help them. So Africa and Asia in particular.
What does it take when you go into these countries and you start working with a zoo? What does it take to start to develop that culture and the actions that will then lead to better standards?
Yeah, that is the key. You know, when you talk about this, most people think, oh, right, it's a dart rifle, it's injections, it's syringes, it's veterinary equipment, it's knowledge, it's all of that. But the really critical thing is who's governing it. Who is the power behind the throne? If you go into, say, an Africa, take Kabul. You know, we've talked about Kabul before. We went in North Carolina Zoo on behalf of the American Zoo Association, went into Kabul those 12 years ago, whatever now, and acting on behalf of all of us across the American Zoo world, raised about $500,000 and put Kabul back in some shape. But the really critical thing was developing a relationship with the mayor of the city. It really had very little to do with what exhibits need refurbishing or how much veterinary treatment. That was all there. But what you really had to say, who is the person that makes decisions about this place? And it can often be the mayor or even the president of a country, or it can be the staff themselves. Where are the blocks? And then you've got language issues, of course. You've definitely got cultural issues, because standards of animal welfare, say in Asia, particularly places like China and Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and in Africa, are very different from our sort of Western concepts. And although scientifically you can define what animal welfare is, they don't necessarily accept the standards that we would think is normal in this day and age. So you've got these sort of power plays in, whose zoo is it, and they can be very protective of their zoos. And on top of that, you've got your language and cultural difficulties as well. And really, if you can't break through those, then the technology, which of course is improved enormously in my 40 years, the technology really is only secondary.
You mentioned this a little bit, but why is it important to have an effort like this for zoos that are doing it right, like the North Carolina Zoo?
Well, twofold. Firstly, none of us who work in the zoo world want to see animals kept in bad conditions. And we have the most gorgeous zoo here. I mean, I could say that. I didn't found it, but I think a lot of people in North Carolina don't realize what a jewel we have. And we're lucky. We have a lot of space. We've had over the years had good funding. So we are building probably some of the best standards that you'll ever see. So, and as a veterinarian and someone who's been in the business a long time, you very quickly get very alarmed by seeing some of these awful conditions. That's one thing. But the other thing, which perhaps is more critical today, is, and we've had several examples of it in recent months, is where a zoo, the Surabaya Zoo in Indonesia, has been all over the media. And with social media, of course, people are picking pictures of sort of dying tigers and skinny lions. And the general public think, that's our zoo. That could be any zoo anywhere. So they're not saying, oh yes, this is a 10,000 miles away. It's nothing to do with us. Any picture like that is a shame on any zoo anywhere in the world.
Well, while you're here, I do want to get updated on what's happening at the North Carolina Zoo. You have recently been in the news for getting a new polar bear.
We've been very lucky, and because we had such bad luck, over the last few months, we very sadly lost two. We lost a baby gorilla, first-time mum who accidentally crushed the youngster, and then of course we lost our lovely breeding male, our lovely big male. Very, very, very odd case with encephalitis, which just a very peculiar incident. And then two polar bears. Both our polar bears died within a few weeks of each other. One was very old, 29. That's about, the record is only about 30. And then a younger animal with again just a freak thing that happened there. And we thought that we were not going to be able to get another polar bear for some while because there are issues bringing them into the country. But fortunately, the Erie Zoo in Pennsylvania wants to build a new exhibit, and they have a lovely female bear that they need to find a home for right now, and we are going to see her probably within the next couple of weeks.
So this would be a good time for folks to perhaps check out the North Carolina Zoo again.
Absolutely, and it's a beautiful time of year. I was just walking this morning and the leaves, you don't need to go to the mountains, just come to the zoo and see the color and all the animals as well.
Well, finally, if our viewers want to find out more information about the North Carolina Zoo, what do they need to do? And if they want to get more information about wild welfare, where do they need to go? Right,
Wild Welfare has its own website, www.wildwelfare.org. And the zoo, of course, also has a website, nczoo.org. So go to either of those or both of them.
Well, Dr. Jones, thank you so much for coming and sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you for having me.